Okay, guys, so welcome to First Chapter Friday, and today I'm going to do Upside Down in the Middle of Nowhere. So this book, let me tell you, this book came as a freebie book in the bottom of a Scholastic order. And I read the back, and I was interested in Hurricane Katrina, and that's what this book is about, a girl's experience during Hurricane Katrina. And I didn't pre-read it like teachers are supposed to because I trusted Scholastic. And there is a part where I cried so hard that one of my fifth graders brought me a box of Kleenex. I couldn't keep reading. So the next year I thought, I've got this. I know it's coming. And I cried equally as hard. Has its ups and downs, but it is a great book into the life of what it really happened. So it's realistic fiction. The family is not real, but the event is real. And I'm pretty sure that there are lots of families who went through the same things that this fictional family did. So I'm going to read chapter 1. Each chapter has the date and the time of what is going on in the chapter. So chapter 1, Friday, August 26th, 2005, 3:17 p.m. I was on my tippy toes, bouncing up and down on the first step of the bus, stuck behind my second cousin, Denisha, and her melon-sized butt. My little sister Celie was up there sobbing, but there wasn't a dang thing I could do about it because I was all squished between the biggest fifth grader in the lower ninth ward and a clump of sweaty kids all but killing each other in the line behind me. Denisha hit me square in the chest with a booty bump and glared over her shoulder. "Girl, you best stop pushing me." Her bottom lip was rolled out so far, I couldn't help that my eyes went straight to the shiny bubblegum pink underside. Hey now, you girls stop all that messing around," my bus driver mumbled, all slow in his old man voice. Mr. Frank had drove my daddy to school when he was a kid, using the same old school bus, except it was new and shiny back then, not all beat down and rusted out like it was for us. Daddy said he guessed Mr. Frank had to be close to 120 years old. "Sorry, Mr. Frank," I said to Denisha's giant backside. The girl was standing on the step in front of me, so all I could see was how her khaki school pants were stretched as tight as it was only a matter of time before they bust open at the seam right in my face. My nerves had all worn down about as thin as the pants on my oversized cousin. Celie's crying had turned to blubbering, and I was flat out done waiting. I tried to push my way into the aisle so I could at least see her. "Armani, what's your problem?" Denisha swung around and stomped her foot. She was at least 6 inches taller than me, and everything about her was big, even her head. When she looked down at me with her fat lips flapping and her big head rolling from side to side, I knew she could kill me easy if she set her mind to it. But I didn't care. Celie was crying. "Shut up, Denisha, and get out of the way." I slipped past her before she had a chance to say something else stupid. I knew where Celie would be sitting because we always sat in the same seat right up front. I didn't like sitting in the back of the bus. Seemed to me the further back you went, the crazier the kids were. Denisha's shoulder bumped me when she passed me up heading to her seat in the back where she always sat. Sure enough, Celie was doing the ugly cry. Her face was all puffed up, her eyes were pouring water, and her arms were folded up tight across her chest. "What's going on? Why you crying?" I asked, all out of breath. Celie looked up at me with her head hiccuping up and down. She ran the back of her hand under her nose, smearing all that wetness across her face. "Booger took my book," she sobbed. I ain't never seen no one look so pitiful. "He took your book? That's why you're fussing?" Celie nodded about 50 times. I hated seeing her not smiling, but I couldn't believe all this drama was on account of a dumb book. I looked around for Booger. I don't know what his mama named him, but ever since that kid was born 5 years ago, he's been Booger. Simple as that. I don't even think he knows his real name. Then I seen him. He was standing at the very last seat in the back of the bus, jumping up and down like a fool, waving my sister's book in the air, just as proud as he could be. I marched toward the back to pry it out of his grimy hands. Stupid Booger seen me coming, and he squealed like a stuck hog. He threw the book. It almost went flying out an open window. I kept heading straight for Booger, never minding the book. At this point, I just wanted to knock that boy upside his head, but I never got the chance. Denisha stepped in my way with both hands on her wide hips and her big head cocked to one side. "Where you going, Armani?" "To kill your little brother," I wanted to say, but my good sense kept the words from leaving my mouth. "Nowhere," I lied. Some little kid leaned over the seat next to us and handed Denisha my sister's book. As soon as I seen the swirly green and white cover, My hand squeezed shut. Celie's journal. No wonder the girl was having such a fit. Denisha started flipping through the pages. She opened her mouth to say something, but just then the oldest Bowman kid reached across in front of her and snatched the book out of her hands. "Boy, you crazy," she squawked. The shaggy, blonde-headed Bowman kid never even looked at my cousin or said a word. He just held the book out for me to take. I grabbed the journal from the boy's smelly hand and whipped around. "You best tell your brother to leave Celie alone," I hollered over my shoulder at Denisha. My heart was about to jump out of my chest. I rubbed the book on the seat of my pants, hoping to wipe off any germs it might have picked up being passed around like gossip on the crazy side of the bus. I walked fast back to my seat. "Whatever," Denisha hollered back. "You need to tell your sister to quit being so trifling and weird." She started laughing, and lots of other kids laughed with her, slapping high fives behind me, but I didn't care. "Whatever," I grumbled to myself. I tossed the journal onto Celie's lap. She went to hugging that book and looking up at me. The tears left in her eyes looked like specks of twinkles dancing around. "Oh, thank you, Armani, thank you." "Just put it away," I said. "Don't be taking that thing out on the bus no more. Why can't you keep it at home anyways?" "Because I never know when I might need it, silly." She was back to being her normal, strange self. I stood there watching her put the book into her small book sack. Not a regular backpack for carrying school stuff. This was her other book sack. The one she used for carrying her special books and whatever else she had stashed down in there. After she zipped it up, she went to hugging the dumb sack. Denisha was right. My sister was weird. "Move over, girl, and let me sit next to the window." After I sat down, Celie laid her head on my shoulder and I sighed. "I love you, Armani." I wiggled my shoulder to get her head off me. I looked at her with my lip curled up, praying nobody else had heard her. "Shut up, Celie." Then, while I was staring out the window, I reached over and gave her hand a little squeeze. Old Mr. Frank always had his soul music pumping out of the homemade speakers he'd rigged up with fishing line. They hung crooked over one huge mirror he used for spying on us kids while he drove. Most times, I could barely hear the music on account of the kids hooting and hollering about the whole lot of nothing, everyone talking at the same time. Some days it got so bad that by the time we finally made it to our stop, I had used up all the nerves I'd been given to help me throughout the day. The noise wasn't the biggest problem, though. Nope, it wasn't the ride, the noise, or even the tore-up seats and the sticky floors that pulled the nice out of me. I didn't even care that they had us stuffed 3 or 4 kids to a seat. What did bother me was the smell. The smell wasn't so bad in the morning, but by afternoon, the August sun had been beating down all day, cooking up those smells. By the time school let out, we loaded onto the bus. It was like stepping into a big, stinky sock. It didn't help matters none when all the sweaty kids piled onto the bus and started spreading their smells around, especially the older kids coming straight from PE, and them white Bowman boys. There were 4 of them in the family, and they always walked together and sat together. Every day when they got on the bus, I'd keep all my fingers crossed that they wouldn't sit nowhere as close to me. I ain't trying to be hurtful, but them kids smelled like their mama was bathing them in pure onion water. I don't know how anyone can smell that bad and not be bothered by their own stink. If they sat even kind of close to me, I'd bury my nose in my own armpit and suck in the scent of the lavender soap Mama made us bathe in twice a day. I was always grateful when they walked on by and headed to the back of the bus. I only had to hide my nose for a quick minute. When Mr. Frank made his first stop, about 12 kids got off. That's when the rest of us shuffled around, jumping into open seats so we wasn't all squished up. While the bus sputtered and bounced down the road, I looked out the window and counted things. Mostly, I took to counting to keep my mind from noticing the canal. I hated the canal. I hated it because Mama hated it, and she hated it because Meemaw hated it. Somewhere in that sinking canal were the bones of my 2 dead uncles, Mama's brothers, Meemaw's sons. Story goes that one day when they were kids, one of them tried to save the other from drowning when the canal decided to take them both. My bus went by that liquid graveyard every day, so I took to counting. Once I tried to count folks sitting or standing out in front of houses, but I lost track and had to start over 2 times. Meemaw said most of them were loafers, and they need to get off their rear ends and make themselves useful. That's when Daddy reminded her that we needed to mind our own business and leave their loafers to their loafing. The last week I started 4th grade, I took to counting all the pink houses. Light pink, dark pink, didn't make no difference. So long as there was some kind of pink in its color, I went on and counted it. I counted 9 pink-colored houses when we turned the last corner before the stop where we got let off. I was used to seeing window fans shoved up in windows. Anybody with good sense had one. We had 3 real nice ones ourselves. Well, except for the one in Mima's room that kept making a chirping bird sound every time she turned it on. But I was not expecting to see the new clunky metal box sticking out of one window in Denisha's mama's boyfriend's house. She seen it too and went to hollering and singing out, "We got us some air, we got us some air," the whole time swinging her big butt doing some kind of happy dance. All week long, she took to saying stupid things like, "Well, I guess I best be getting back to my air conditioning. It's so hot, y'all. Y'all all want to come inside and sit in my air conditioning?" Stuck-up Denisha and her lame air conditioner got on my last nerve. After letting out kids here and there across the lower 9th Ward, Mr. Frank led us off the front step of the tire shop where my Uncle T-Bone worked part-time. From there, it was just a short walk to get home. 8 kids got off at our stop. The Bowman kids, Denisha and Bugger, and me and Seeley. Denisha and Bugger got off because their mama's boyfriend, Mr. Charlie, worked at the shop too. I don't know why they liked going to that nasty place. It reeked of gasoline, motor oil, cigarettes, and rotten old men. The only good thing about that shop was Mr. Jasper Jr. Sr. and the sound of his saxophone pouring out into the air. We could hear the sweet sound of his horn playing clear down by our house every day of the week except for Sunday, when the shop was closed up and Mr. Jr. Sr. was at church making music for Jesus instead of for the rest of us. "Y'all have a good weekend," Mr. Frank said, and pulled the bus door open. "Don't forget to watch the 5 o'clock news now." Seeley was on the step in front of me. She stopped so fast, I almost plowed right into the back of her. "Why do we need to watch the news, Mr. Frank?" It took him a second to chew on the toothpick sitting between the couple of teeth he had left. Then he pulled the dirty ball cap off and rubbed his bald head. Staring out the bus windshield, he said, "There's a storm a-brewin', a big one, out there in the Gulf." He let a whoosh of stale old man air. "Reminds me of Betsy." "Who's Betsy?" I asked. Mr. Frank put his cap back on his head and looked me in the eye. He plucked his toothpick from his mouth. He squinted up his already wrinkly eyes and said all serious, "Betsy was the storm that sucked the life out of me. She took away everyone I ever loved." Seeley gasped. "That's so terrible, Mr. Frank." "Yes, it is, child," he sighed. "All right, then." And just like that, he turned and looked straight out the bug-spattered windshield. "Y'all have a good weekend. Tell your daddy and them I said hey." I got a whiff of something that smelled as ripe as rotten gumbo, and I knew right then them Bowman kids had been coming up behind me. Scared that the smell was contagious and could possibly stick to my clothes and skin forever, I gave Seeley a nudge. Once we were off the bus, Denisha and Bugger went on to the tire shop. The oniony Bowman kids took off running to Lord knows where, and me and my sister crossed the road to walk home. Seeley pulled out one of her books and started reading. "How can you walk and read at the same time?" She shrugged, never taking her eyes off her book. "I guess it's because my feet know the way home." "Yeah, but ain't you worried about tripping over something?" I almost wish she would trip to prove my point. She stopped and looked at me over the top of her book. She rolled her eyes real big and took a slow, deep breath. "I can walk and read at the same time, but I sure can't talk and read at the same time." For a split second, she reminded me of Mama with that sweet, soft, "I feel sorry for you" face, 'cause you're so cute and young and ain't smart enough to know yet look. She gave me a little sympathy smile and then went on to reading and walking again. I was left there, just staring after her with my mouth hanging open. While Seeley walked on ahead of me, I let my eyes wander up to the sunshiny sky. I couldn't help but notice that there wasn't one tiny cloud up there. Mr. Frank was a nice man and all, but I got to thinking that he must be getting real old, maybe even too old to drive a bus. There wasn't no storm coming. Even I could tell that. It was a perfect day. It was Friday, and it was my birthday weekend. I smiled to myself and hollered, "Wait up, Seeley!" All right, guys. So I hope you enjoyed the first chapter. It's a great book. So I hope that this is a book that you would be interested in. So have a great weekend.